Hello, and welcome to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. I'm Susie Bolt. This is a space for anyone who's navigating chronic illness. We are here to share real stories, helpful insights, and honest conversations about what it really takes to help yourself heal a tiny bit every day. So whether you're in bed listening, you're on a gentle walk, or you're just needing some company as you go about your day, I'm so glad that you're here. So a very warm welcome to my next recovery story interview. And I am very excited for you all to meet the very, very magical Gina Short, who has been on a journey of recovery herself for some time and is now in an incredibly joyous place. And I'm really privileged to bring her story to people because she's such an inspiration. I'm inspired by Gina.
Oh, thank you, Susie.
You're welcome. But first of all, Gina, I want you to introduce yourself. Let us know where you live, and then let's hear a little bit about your initial story. Like, what happened at the beginning? What was going on for you? And people always want to know, how ill was this person?
Exactly. Like, surely you're not as ill as I was, right?
Right. Exactly. So let's hear from you.
Sure.
Let's hear from you.
Yeah. So I live in Washington, so Seattle, Washington, just outside. It's a beautiful area full of, a lot of natural beauty, which I love. I first met Susie in this group. I was super excited to meet a group from the UK. Like, what's happening in there? So, we'll probably, I'm sure, share a little bit more about how that connection happened later in the story. But a little for me in those early days, it was 2021 in July where I had COVID. My whole family had COVID in that period. It was part of some of those breakthrough cases that were happening early on. And for me, it was pretty, standard, I would say, COVID. Didn't go to the emergency room or, any significant things. Didn't feel great. It felt like a really bad cold and put us down all for a couple of weeks. My youngest son, my 9-year-old, and my husband also had it. My 17-year-old stayed safe. But in those periods, it was, people were getting COVID and made our way through it just by resting. And, main symptoms were very standard, I would say, in COVID. For me and probably my personality type, I just pushed right through in those periods. Like, surely I'll be better next week. My husband and son did. I can, kind of follow suit. Thought 3 weeks was pretty reasonable. Started back to work. Started to try to resume my life as I had it before. So those were kind of those early stages, and then I just kept pushing through, thinking I'd surely be better as time progressed here, which kind of led me to my long COVID piece.
So what happened? When did you know, oh, this isn't doing what I think it should? This isn't doing what everything else that I've had in my life has done, as in better. How long did that take for that to really become noticeable?
It took around 3 months to the point where I'm like, I was at a point, I remember just pushing and pushing through that. And I would say long COVID and those symptoms changed and it just felt different. Like the fatigue, even having kids, like it was beyond any bone, just down to the bone fatigue. And so there was a point where I'm kind of like, little bit better. Okay. But I try to I didn't say this. I'm trying to will myself through this. Like, okay, come on, you can do it. You can do it. And I love exercise. I continue to exercise and I just wasn't feeling myself. So I just like I just had such a malaise around me. So it was in that time in October, I said, I just need to stop. I was working full time again, but I was just crashing. I was laying down in between meetings. I was finding myself on the bed. And by the end of the day, I was so exhausted. I, had headaches. I was dizzy and I would just collapse and lay in bed. Couldn't even, function to come down to the family with dinner or do anything else. I said, I need a pause. And I told my manager, I'm like, I'm going to take 2 weeks rest and then I'll come back. So that's what I thought, right?
Because why wouldn't you think that?
Why wouldn't I? I always bounce right back, right? So I thought, let's just going to take a couple weeks. Let me just rest for a couple weeks. I'll come back to work. I'll come back to resuming everything I love. And it was a year until I just returned back to work last month. So it was around a year that I'm like 2 months, 2 weeks turned to a year. But it's been a journey. I would say I would never want to have long COVID again, but yet in a way I'm so blessed in what I've learned through this process. So that's the aspect for me that I just feel changed. And, I know you always said like, you'll be a better version. I'm like, yeah, I am. I am a better version of myself, for having have gone through this.
And that can be quite a difficult thing for people to hear, especially if they're
Oh
in
yeah.
the dark pits phase of this journey. They're like,
Uh,
how can this be something that I'm going to look at and go, oh, I'm really glad I went through that.
yeah.
So
Oh, and even, yeah.
at what point did you become conscious of that you needed to do a recovery journey that was not something that was similar to anything that you've done before? Like, when did you really start to go,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I need to change what I'm doing?
So after I took time off, I thought I knew, thought I knew what rest was. You'll just probably laugh at this one. I thought rest was just napping, and I napped, maybe 3 times a year. Like I
Right.
never napped because I didn't need to. Only if I was really sick did I need to take an afternoon nap.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll just rest. And I told myself, well, every time I'm tired, I'm rest. And so I'm like, well, I'm tired in the morning. Next thing I knew, I took a 2-hour mid-morning nap. I felt like a baby. Then I'm like, oh, had lunch. I'm like, I'm exhausted. So I took an afternoon nap. Like I was just exhausted. And I found myself in this, I would say, a little bit of a downward spiral. Like the more I'm like, well, I'm not feeling well, I should rest. And so then I
Mm.
just continued to rest. But I was at the point where I was frustrated too. I'm like, I'm so frustrated. Like I thought if I just slept a little bit, I could get back.
Yeah.
And my body just continued just go into more symptoms. And that's what I'm saying. What I had as first onset was so different than what I had then in long COVID. And then I'm like, okay, I guess it is long COVID. It's like been now at this point, 4 months. And I didn't feel great. I mean, would tell people like I just felt like I drank all night and I took a red eye flight and I ended up in the wrong time zone. I'm like, I
Yeah.
just felt like crap
Yeah.
and feeling like that way. And that's when I also started to have I mean, everything continued, from the onset. I had the shortness of breath. I had, just the fatigue, the brain fog, dizziness. Like I remember like almost feeling like so woozy. I just couldn't stand,
Yeah.
the headaches, the nausea. And then I've continued to have more neurological issues. And that's where I was probably in my lowest of lows, like November, December of last year, feeling like, what the heck is happening? Like the sensitivity was like, it's almost like someone strips your skin off. You're like, I'm
Yeah.
so sensitive. Like I'm like 2 boys in the house. They're not quiet. So
Yeah.
the sensitivity, and that's when I was just at my lowest of lows. And then that emotional toll really
Yeah.
was hard on me too. I found, really almost like a bedbound, housebound. Like I looked at all the mailbox. I'm like, just started crying. I'm like, I don't think I can actually cross the street outside to go get the mail.
Yeah.
And so I found myself so sore, and I'm an athlete. So I'm like, I know I need to be moving, but I found myself so sore from not moving that I knew
Right.
I had
Yeah.
to do. And I was just emotional. I was, just could barely shower. It took me, every 3 days. Like I'm like, couldn't even shower, didn't cook, didn't drive, like all those things of just daily care of yourself.
Yeah.
I just wasn't able to do. So I was in a really bad physical state. I lost 10 pounds, which so I just lost my strength,
Yeah.
but that's where the mental toll took place. And I'm like, I need to change. Like I needed to try something different. And I'd been searching and searching for all sorts of things. And it was in that period of the lowest of lows, like emotionally, where I'm like trying to reset myself, right? I was trying to also be realistic. Like I've always pushed through. Maybe I just need to slow down and say, no, you're ill, Gina. And so I was telling myself that you're ill, rest because you're ill. Like I was saying, okay, that's the state you're in. And then super emotional because I'm like, well, that's a hard place to be in. Like just accept being this ill and this is kind of how it's going to be. So I was trying to accept that portion of this illness, and it just put me in really a place where I lost hope. I didn't feel like like this was temporary. And it was in those moments, where I was just searching, right? Searching for all sorts of answers or searching, crowdsourcing with the internet, like what's out there. And you just see horrible things. And it was in that moment where Rachel, who's been involved in the 360 Mind Body Soul community and the rest repair classes, said, there's these Susie Bolt, and there's these videos out there, and it was the 10 minutes of gentle easing. I mean, that was my thing. I watched you on YouTube. I'm like, she's just got this rest thing down. I'm like, oh, I've been napping all day, but it's all I could do. And so it was in that, I would say, point of like, right, I almost felt like I had to reach my lowest of lows to then be able to rebuild. So it was in my lowest of lows where, emotionally and physically, like I was not in a great space. And to be able to rebuild from that and just that glimmer of hope. And I remember watching, just laying there. I mean, I spent hours on my bed, hours on the yoga mat, hours on my couch each day. But it was in that moment where I could just hear your soothing voice, and I would play it a couple times a day. And it's like all I could do was 10 minutes. So I would just found that 10-minute video to it's all I could do. But it was just something that really was like a, warm blanket on me. I'm like yoga and I'm just laying there, and I slowly started to look at and explore more of your videos that you had posted online. Like some of them are an hour. I'm like, an hour? Oh my goodness. Like, okay, well, I would do 10 minutes at a time. So I'm like, I'm curious what this whole rest repair is, but I would just do the 10 minutes, or
Yeah.
I'd skip 30 minutes in and just do the rest.
End. Yeah.
I would do the end. I'm like, and the one piece that I kept coming back to me in that is that the words of reassurance, and you kept saying this is temporary. I'm like, is it? And I was like playing my mind, right? Is it temporary? Okay. I think I'd lost belief around the way, right? That I would recover. And so just hearing those words, I'm like, okay, my brain's not believing that. And I wrote it down on a flashcard. I'm like, this is temporary. Yes. Okay. This is temporary. And I needed just to reassure myself that it was at that point in time. So anyway, that's a little bit also how I came to discover the beautiful work that you are doing with a long COVID community.
Oh, wonderful. It's
Yeah.
funny because, of course, I have no real awareness because I don't really look at how many people have watched the videos. I have no real awareness of how many people are out there kind of looking at those things that I've shared. And my dog
Yeah.
is walking away in the background. I hope everyone's okay with that. But, I know that the resources are there for people. And I think, it's really important that people have access to something that doesn't cost them anything at all.
Yeah.
Especially when you're lying on your couch, like you say, you're like, I don't want to make a decision about whether or not I'm going to pay for this. Let me just watch. Let me just take it in. Let me just consider this as an idea. And that sounds perfect because that's what you've done. And, I know many people who just get what they need from the YouTube channel. They've got the interviews that they can work their way through piece at a time. They've got classes. They've got those 10-minute pieces there. And I think they're probably the most watched thing, if I was to make a guess, because they're really easy and I should make more of them, but I'm just really busy. I will. This is my goal, right? So it's really lovely to hear you say, I found something that was 10 minutes and I could just about manage. First of all, just listening to it, just being with it.
And that's what prompted me to do more. Like in part of my recovery, I was still searching for answers. I mean, I would have done anything, looking at the research. I would have flown anywhere in the world. I was looking at that. I'd signed up for things. There just was not, it wasn't in the 2020, but in the class of 2021, right? There's still not a lot of answers and understanding. I'd searched, I'd gone through the GP and even in our area, we have a long COVID clinic, but it took me over 4 months to get in.
Yeah.
So still not really a viable option. And I just felt better. And I think the biggest thing for me is like, oh, there's more. I'm like, and I thought it was kind of creepy too. I'm like, I'm just watching Susie Bolt, but I'm watching her all through the day and I feel like I know her voice, but I'm like, it's kind of creepy too. Like I'm just listening to her and I feel like I know her, but
I'm really fine with it.
It's really strange. But I'm like, there has to be more. And that's where I looked in your website at the different options and found the Fern program, which was just life-changing and a game changer for me, right? I'd lost my spark along the way.
How many months in were you when you signed up to the Fern?
So 6 months in. Yeah. And I remember wanting, I'm like, I want to start right away. And it was after the holidays. I'm like, okay. So it was January, February of this year, 2022, that I had started. So almost coming up on a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were at your lowest point, I think, when you started, weren't you? Well, you were just beginning to kind of come out.
I was kind of in that. Yeah. I'd had the things where I first started with breath work. So I had realized, and that was one of the first things I started, the stasis program. I heard people talking about it. So I had started that in November, and it actually completely helped me, after about 5 months with that shortness of breath feeling.
Yeah.
It worked. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, it was the first thing I felt like I could control. And I think that was part of it. It's just like, wow. And like every day I just, I just felt so crummy in those periods that it was something that I could hold on to, of just a calming sense in my body. And also just being able, to read again. There was a point where I'm like, I just couldn't even read out loud to my son because of my
Yeah.
breathing. And I could see that progress. So breathing. And then I just started super easy, gentle yoga before I started the Fern program.
I think that breathing piece is such an important piece, but actually I think a lot of people really find it difficult to get their heads around. They're like, hang on a minute, I'm really unwell. And there's a whole load of things going on in my body that are nothing to do with my breathing, but I may have also shortness of breath.
Yeah.
How can that simple thing of doing breathing exercises help me recover? And I think people are beginning to learn more and more about it now.
Absolutely.
And, the importance of breath. Obviously, we recommend people to read the James Nestor Breathe book, or Breath.
Yes. That
I
was
never But
fantastic book.
it's such a fantastic book to help you understand how you breathe does to the body.
Mhm.
And if you are stuck in a dysregulated breathing pattern, it is going to create dysfunction in your autonomic nervous system.
Mhm.
And, I think most of us have got an idea now that that's a really big player in a lot of what's going on. So, I love that you found that and that you went with that, because I think a lot of people can get really stuck in the kind of swamp when they're at the lowest bit and just not have any energy to look for anything, not have any idea that they could do things to help themselves. People get quite caught up in reading about the latest research and reading about the next trial and, make it easy for me. And you can understand that, because actually someone's saying to you, do you know what? If you did 2 lots of breath work a day, it's going to make a difference in 6 weeks. They'll be
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't have the energy for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And right.
Yeah, it can
And
be hard, but that was something I'm like, you can do it laying down. So,
right.
and you can
Exactly.
start slow, right? Like all of it can just start
Of
and just
course.
start something. And it was for me something that I could see a result in. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is working for
Exactly. Yeah. Lovely. So you joined Fern, so our Fern program. And now I've not talked about Fern on these videos because I always feel a little bit uncomfortable about promoting my own work. but but I set up
promote
the
it for
Fern
you.
program.
I mean, just the whole mind body connection, right? Just of not beyond body. I think I needed help with
Yeah.
how I was thinking about my recovery and what was going on in my body. And that drastically made a difference.
I think that's the thing, because I sometimes try to work out what is it that we do on Fern because there's so many different things, and I just finished a round of them this week. We just had 3 programs that closed this week. And I think we take the physical aspect of what's going on. So we do the breath work and we do the kind of physical kind of getting confidence back in your body piece. But then we look at who you're being around your illness and how are you approaching it and how do you treat yourself and how are you on this journey? So, actually the work that I do with you, and obviously you can talk about this a bit more in depth, is about how do I show up to myself in my time of need?
Hmm.
And I think I'm really clear now that that's the piece that I bring to it because, I'm a coach. I work with NLP and I work with psychometrics and I work with counseling skills. And, it's all kind of in one big melting pot for me. And it's, this piece is probably the most important piece that I've identified to help people think about how am I approaching my recovery? How am I approaching looking after myself? Am I just waiting for this kind of fix? Am I waiting for something to happen? Am I angry? Am I resentful? Am I cross? Am I low and depressed? Am I disconnected? If you're going to sit with all of that emotion, that's going to have such a powerfully negative effect on your nervous system
Hmm.
by itself. Never mind what's already going on there with the symptoms.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So just talk to us about what it was like for you to start that journey at that point. So what I have to say is Gina, obviously she's in Washington State, right? So the program for her started, she joined at 2
Early.
p.m. start UK time, right? But it's 6
Yeah.
a.m. for her. So that's dedication. She would show up like this,
Oh, and
pale.
yeah. No, I was probably very pale. Yeah, I just found, I needed a community though. So I needed people that understood me. I think in those phases, right? You become frustrated because you might look fine or just, look a little tired, but the internal and just my body vibrations, the sensitivity to the sound, like all that was happening inside of me, I was reassured by people that, oh yeah, if you just said a couple symptoms, are like, oh yeah, me too. It was like
Right.
just a community.
It's
Like I
normal.
just needed that at that point.
Yeah.
And so finding that community and kind of what it helped change is for me, just my lens, right? I think the lens of illness and the lens of recovery and rebuilding of hope and just figuring out that balance. I think I was at that point, I think one of the biggest things I remember the question and one of the I had asked is, how do you pace? Like I didn't understand pacing because I would slow down and then just speed right up, slow down. Like that wasn't pacing. And I realized I was just planning my crashes. So I
Yeah.
had not realized that, but I was really in that cycle of like, oh no, if I go on a walk right now, or if I just, even just walk a quarter mile, oh, I'm probably going to feel terrible and probably have to sleep for 2 hours. So that aspect of it was something that I could move through and understanding, oh, I can go out on a walk. And if I need to rest, I need to rest. So figuring out for me, changing the language
Yeah.
and changing my lens were some of the biggest things in that phase. Once I went through, okay, I need to, you know, accept in that phase. That was huge. I would say the other thing is just really understanding that I needed to pull away from all those external sources. During that time as well, you said, remove yourself from media, remove yourself from, some of these like stop searching.
Yeah.
And it was really in that phase where I just stopped searching and I learned to meditate without really understanding meditation. I've learned to be mindful. Like what, I mean, I had to search for all of this. I'm like, what is mindfulness versus meditation and
Yeah.
what's PNS? Like I didn't know what's a vagus nerve. But I had to realize that I, I needed to realize that if I had the ability just to, be out in nature or different things, I could then reset and I could just calm my brain. I kept feeding my brain and I never realized that the brain just also needs rest. So at that point, I felt like if I look back at my journey, I felt like it was introspective. Like I had a period where I just was kind of in my little mini, yoga nidra nest or my cocoon. Like I needed to just be introspective.
Yeah.
Journaling, like how can journaling be bad? The morning I did, morning pages where it was just really a time where I was able to self-reflect, just really get grounded again. And I never had that time before. So I was able to peel off things. I was off of work. My husband and family was super supportive. Friends were super supportive. So I was able to surround myself with a great friends and family that understood what I was going through, and I could be introspective and start to rest. And then starting to add a little bit more in there, right? Play, joy, like just smiling, right? Like that to me, I could figure out a balance and I understood then that balance. Or once during in the program in those phases, you said, just do nothing. I'm like, do nothing. I'm always doing something. I'm always productive. I'm a planner. I'm a doer. And I realized, oh, I need to stop. I've been really good at adulting, right? I'm really good at that, but I need to stop. I've
Yeah.
been
Right.
practicing my whole life, but what is it like to be a kid again? And I
Mm.
started to do those things and just think like, oh man, what did I do as a kid? I just jumped on the trampoline with my kids. If I saw a park, I'm like, oh, let me do it. I don't care if I'm dizzy. Let's go on a swing for a little bit. And just even those moments, they build upon each other. So where you
Yeah.
continue to rest, it's not waiting to the end of the day, like in my old self, like go, go, go. And then just at the end of the day, like, whew, wow, what a busy day. It was incorporating rest, but incorporating play, laugh,
Yeah.
finding my joy, but
Yeah.
also finding the joy of connecting with others. I mean, for me, that was that secret piece
Yeah.
of not just being out in nature and just like giving myself a rest and just kind of, away from, some of the distractions of the world, but really connecting with people again and how love is for me was just at the center of just deep connection and joy with others and just caring for others as well.
Amazing. So, as you talked there, that you're raising that word joy, and I think it's a really beautiful reminder to people that actually, the opposite of fear is joy. And we
Hmm.
can spend a lot of time living in fear of relapse, living in fear of post-exertional malaise, living in fear of the symptoms, living in fear of what next, living in fear of loss of identity, living in fear of loss of job, of, all of that. That's just
Yeah.
a massive dose of fear going on for many people on this journey all the time. And when I say, okay, one of the core pieces that you're going to need to do to help you move away from that is find joy. People can often look at me and go, are you mad? There is no joy here. And
Yeah.
yet, when we make ourselves do it, we can begin to find little tiny things that begin to open our eyes and go, oh, actually, that was really lovely. Because in the past, we've gone, well, joy is big, or joy is, this huge travel, or joy is this big event. And actually, I get people to do tiny little pieces of engaging with joy, like 5% stretch into joy.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
remember what some of the earliest pieces of joy were that you allowed yourself to stretch into?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just laughing. Like
Laughing.
just laughing. So, just thinking back, okay, this is funny. My husband's gonna like kill me for saying this, but we would do like, he would just like look at me and then like, we would just jump up and down together. Like, oh my gosh, like I could do it for 10, 20 seconds, but I was laughing
Yeah.
every day. So I would, we would just kind of jump up and down, do a little belly rub. So just try that. That was simple, right? But under 30 seconds, doable, right? I I mean, there was one, I'll have to post it. There was a funny, just people laughing. Like there was a video that somebody put on a recovery COVID site, just of people laughing for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
When I was feeling well, I started there. So eventually I increased. I mean, I would watch, 5, 10 minutes with my youngest son, the cat and dog videos, right? Like stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there's things that you can do starting like smaller from in the house. And then I would just continue to do more. Music is a huge, part of my life. I love music. I created my joy list. First
Right.
I was strolls. What I would do, I mean, I would drive quarter mile to a park, like, for weeks, months, I didn't drive. So just driving, right? But I would first go sit in nature, right? Like if you
Nice.
can't do much, even just walk out
Go
your door,
sit
right?
there. Yeah.
Just go sit outside.
Yeah.
So I'd start small, but dream big. So I would, had my list of like all these things I want to do. And I'm like, just start to do some of these things.
Mhm.
And so it just grew over time. I was able to do more and more. And like, that was really fun. And, just sometimes I would listen to audiobooks on my walk. Sometimes I would just play my joy mix. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to dance and sing. My lungs felt better than ever. So sometimes I would just sing, I would dance. I'm just goofy. Like, what did you do as a kid that just made you laugh with your friends? Like,
Yes.
what are those things? And, just reaching out to friends and family. And, some of my best moments ever were I was able to just capture nature. Nature is a huge part of me. So joy, I mean, it's just amazing to be in nature, but then to add that with a connection of like friends,
Yeah.
um, just multiplied for me, so
Mhm.
just starting small, like I would take my fire pit. But I didn't try. I think that's the biggest thing of all of this. I didn't overanalyze, removed my smart watch. I still do. I don't look at my heart rate. I'm like, I
Right.
know my heart rate, right? At points when I was feeling really unwell, like it would spike to 160. I'm like, oh, I don't need to know that. But so now I still don't plan time and distance. I'll tell my friends, okay, tell me where to meet you. I'll be there. Just going out though and into nature with people,
Yeah.
is I think such a healing thing.
Oh,
And do things that you don't think are possible, right? Or do a portion of what you think is possible, but
right.
just try. I remember those in your early days. I think that's a different connotation in the UK. Like put your brave pants on.
Yeah. I
Right? I
say
think
that.
underwear, I'm like every day I'm like, okay, put my brave pants on. I'm gonna go out and
Right.
we were like in such a community, right? I would, drive to go sit and just 20 minutes from the beach, from the ocean. So I would just drive to go sit and listen to music. I'm like, and I could come back to a community and say, man, I just drove and, here's what I saw, the ocean. And, and then you get reinforcement, like, oh my gosh, way to go, right? What other community is going to applaud you for drive? Like if I told other people, I'm like, I just drove 20 minutes to the beach, and they're like,
Right.
okay, and you did what there? I'm like,
Yeah.
so
And why are we celebrating? So the
yeah,
community you're talking about is the community of people you did the program with. And that's,
yes,
I think, the piece
yeah,
that makes it really special, because you essentially have a group of cheerleaders. These are the people that inspire each other and cheerlead when you have these moments of joy and breakthrough. And you are all sharing the evidence of this is possible when we do little bits with respect and in congruence with our body. You're all sharing that, which becomes evidence for all of you, for all of your brains to go, this is possible. Oh, this is more than possible. I'm doing it.
yeah,
And that, I think, is the power of the fun, because it's a journey that a group of people go on together. And I've often looked at the program and gone, I really wish I was in this group. They look like they're having so much fun. And I know that one of the ways that I, love to interact with the groups is I like to make people laugh, and I will share stories, and that's a really big piece for me. So I think that also, it sort of sets a tone, and there's just a lot of joy and laughter. I'd say 99% of the groups that we've had through, we've laughed a lot, and that I can see it's in itself is so magical for people, because they've not been laughing. You've not been laughing very
no,
much.
you don't. Yeah, it's hard when you're just feeling like, oh my gosh, you just feel the worst you have. And I
Yeah.
think it's a perspective, right, with long COVID, because people still probably even now don't quite understand long COVID or understand what, the dysfunctions happening in your nervous system. And so from that, I felt the sickest I had been in my life with no answers or cure. Like, and it just let me like just trying to find that answer was really hard to be told, even, after months of waiting, like, oh, there's not really anything we're doing, even at a, renowned hospital in my local area that focused on long COVID. I'm like, oh my gosh, it really was down to, I would say for me, healing from the inside out. Like that was where I was in that period of time. I was really, conscious of not just surrounding myself at people that brought the best out of me, and also just that love and care and connection, like people that, came into my life, just continuing to check on me, or, drop by meals, send me notes, like all of that meant so much. And how could I then give that back too, right? Moments of joy are best when shared. So I think for me is like, even if I was unwell on a walk, like I just said, you know what, smile, right? Or, for me, kind of a thing through this journey was trust, like just trust the process.
Yeah.
And also, I just have this visual, like I'm just being held, and just smile from my heart, right? So that was something that heard it in a yoga nidra like midsummer, but I'm like, that was just so precious to me, just something that was so dear, like just smile. And like, and I could just almost feel my body in reverse of all the symptoms, right? When I'd gone down to like, oh my gosh, this is happening today, like track it. I'm like, no, 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 just the symptoms there. But could I reverse that, right? Like, could I slowly have play and like that sequence of play and rest? Could I have more play, less rest, but really good rest, right? Like the rest that is good for your soul. And I could heal from the inside out. And I think that was the piece to me that just created just continued momentum for me in that moment of realizing that if I just, smile and just also show joy to others, encourage others also, like the reaching out and, showing gratitude, but also just sharing joy with other people is just something that will really help healing.
I love that idea of healing from the inside out, because I think we get so focused when we're in our most ill. We get so focused on the symptoms, and because they take over our lives, right? And we lose all perspective of anything else in life. We do not see anything else. We only are experiencing and focusing on the symptoms, and there's no joy there. There's no joy. But what we know is that if you can engage with joy, you've got some of the most powerful healing hormones that are going to be released into your body. You've got dopamine, you've got oxytocin, and that's going to start shifting the nervous system into that rest repair state, which is what we want. We are not going to do that as easily if we are absolutely focused on the terrifying, relentless symptom exposure that's going on. And it feels counterintuitive because, of course, our
Yeah,
brains
yeah,
are designed to go, something terrible is happening. Let's focus on it. Let's focus on it. Let's worry about it. Let's focus on it. And actually, what we know is the brain can be much more effective if we go, thank you for letting me know that there's stuff going on I need to worry about. But actually, let's choose to not worry about it right now. Just let's give me a chance. I'm going to look elsewhere and I'm going to see what I could do to shift that internal state. And 9 out of 10 times, we begin to see a difference. Something happened.
Absolutely.
And it's a very difficult thing to believe until you
Yeah, I
start
think
to do it, right?
removing fear is hard, right? Because you're in this state where your body, sometimes you don't know what's happening. So the more, I would say that one thing for me that in my recovery journey and kind of this phase is that I was also building knowledge along the way. So I was fascinated by the mind body connection. So, started with Cure, did Breathe.
Right.
Full Catastrophe Living for me was just a book that just helped me understand, just being, right? I was always a doer and I could just be. So understanding, but The Way Out and just other books, Breaking Free that's been written, like those are all about the mind body connection and just the power of the mind, you know, um, just understanding that. Yeah, I would often say in another recovery video, I'm like, they just said, thank you, brain. I'm like, okay, thank you, brain. Thank you. You are doing your job for protecting me.
Yeah.
And you know, but shifting that lens or everything to, okay, what did I accomplish versus focusing on all the things that I wish I could be or, wanting to go back to old self. But I would say kind of in the midst of that journey, I started to go, how did I do everything I did before? Full working mom, loved sports and loved activity. And I had a very busy life. And at one point I'm like, how did I do that? And that's where I realized, oh, I have changed.
Yeah.
I am at a place where I really value and appreciate rest in a whole nother way. Rest is not just taking a nap anymore. and
Right.
so it was like, yes, I'm at a place where I really look forward to just, sitting down for a moment or doing my yoga or doing, a yoga nidra, which I still do most daily. So there's a shift that happens. But I think if you're waiting and, trying to live in, if you're in fear, um, it's going to possibly prevent you from that shift happening versus just being. So I
Yeah.
would say for me, it was just a letting go, a complete letting go of like, all right, don't worry about like today, each day has enough worries of itself, right? So just don't worry, but just be, and it will come. And not trying to be on a certain timeline, from me was really helpful as well.
Nice. And I think it is important to do it with people because the people hold you accountable and the people keep you nudging up to the surface when you might have a day where you go, oh, I can't do it today. And if you don't have to do it on the Fern program, I just will encourage people to go on a journey of recovery rather than go on a journey of sharing your symptoms with each other.
Yeah.
So, the whole idea of finding a support group isn't just about a place where you get to connect and talk about how ill you are. It's actually a place where you get to connect and talk about the journey you want to take towards health. And I
Yeah.
think, there's quite a different thing. So the Fern group, we have very specific guidelines around how people interact. You have a WhatsApp group that we create. And, I'm telling you guys all of this because you can do this for yourselves. Get with a group of people and say, right, this week we are going to engage with joy. And the only messages that we're going to share with each other are the successes we've had in that. And actually, once you start, it's like laughing, or yawning. It becomes contagious. So you're like, oh, that looks amazing. Look, they sent a picture. They went to somewhere beautiful and that's a beautiful tree or whatever. And then someone else goes, oh, I'm going to try that. And off they go. And that's why I think it's a really beautiful thing because you've got other people going, I did that. You can do it too. And you found that, I think. And I know that you shared some of the pictures that you took with me. And, you were out there taking photographs of some of the most beautiful ferns in the woodland around where you live.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
I think I still do. I think that's a piece of, right, creativity is such a big element of it. I love photography and going out and, not even thinking about, oh, how far have I gone? I just stopped thinking about it. I would go and I'm like, how do I feel? Okay, let me just go a little further. And I would take photos along the way. And all the photos of nature, right? Then I'd come back and look at them. And I created an Instagram page for myself to help my future self,
Nice.
remember this journey. And it's
Beautiful.
all about just the lovely places I've been since I've had long COVID. And I go back on that and, I send my messages along the way. A lot of them are Susie Bolt quotes, that get sprinkled in, or just, I'm a Christian, so just faith-based quotes and things that have just been my anchor through this time. I want to hold on to that and not forget, right? Like, it's appreciating all those small things
Yeah.
in life right now in such a deeper way. And
I think
that's,
I love that idea of you going out there on your walks, because a lot of people go out and they have a walk, or they'll say, right, I'm going to take a 10-minute walk, or I'm going to do a 1-mile walk, whatever it is. And they get very, very rigid around, if I
yeah,
do more than that, I'll have post-exertional malaise. So I have to do it, or I'm going to have a timer and it's going to stop me. And that
yeah,
means you're not on your walk. You're not on your walk looking at nature, observing the sky. You're on your walk going, am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? And then you're going, okay, what's my watch saying? What's my watch saying? Okay, no, I've got to stop now. I've got to turn around, because if I do any more, I'm going to get sick. And actually, what you're doing is almost reinforcing all of the kind of fear and panic. And what you did, which I think is beautiful, and I always encourage people to do this, is go on a very short walk, but take your camera and look at other stuff. Take your attention, lift your eyes. It's something that I say often, lift your eyes from navel gazing and look around you and just breathe. And, there's often some beautiful photos that come out of the fern groups, because people are just going, I'm lifting my eyes and I'm seeing things for the first time, it feels like, in a long time. And it's like, wow, it's like I've come out of prison looking at
yeah.
the sun, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, it's so big in changing perspective, right? And I think the bigger perspective in just seeing things differently. The other day, yeah, or it was yesterday, I was on my walk and I'm like, oh, the sun's out. And I just sit there, close my eyes. I'm like, how do I feel right now? And I was just like loving that sun coming on my face. Like, I would have never done that, over a year ago. And my prior self, I just wouldn't have stopped that way. And I'm like, it's just really appreciating, everything around you, but really having that perspective to do so. For me, in when you have that perspective of what you've gone through, and right in the
Yeah.
recovery, just what other people are going through, I think for me, flipping that into like all these things you wish you could be, or, a sense of frustration for me is also a sense of fear, right? Like being frustrated, but really living in like asking yourself, like, why, some things I wanted to do, I'm like, I just want to be a mom again. Right. And like thinking through, like, what does that mean to me? Right. Like, how am I going to help someone else? And that is perspective that if you really step back and look at your values, your beliefs, and are able to look at it much bigger and just dream much bigger. I mean, I think that was the thing for me. It's like beautiful devotional I read months ago was like, am I dreaming big enough? Right? Am I taking big enough risks? Like, imagine that, right? It's like, oh, instead of just increments, like, oh, let me add some time. I was like, am I dreaming big enough? Like, how else might my story be helped to inspire someone else and make a difference in the future? Like, how can I use this as something that will help others as I transform? So I think the perspective piece, is something that you just, if you step back and really take some time to reflect, but then I think in that rebuilding of like rebuilding strength and energy is also that mindset. And for me, the mindset, and I could, do something and say, oh, I took a walk with a friend and I did. Like a couple times just plopped right myself down on the trail. I'm like, I thought I would be, able to go. It was just a couple miles. But again, at that point, I think I had my watch on. I'm like, why am I looking at time? And so that was a learning lesson for me kind of in those early, probably 6, 7 months, like up and down going, no, I need a different perspective. I needed to step back and say, no, I'm grateful. I got outside. I was with my friend. We had a great time. And that was for me, you're looking at all those examples and, write them out if you have to. But I would write some of them out going, no, I just needed to change that lens and perspective to always be looking at the positive. I'm a very optimistic, positive person. But boy, this is a hard journey.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it took me more mental strength more mental strength than physical
Yeah.
getting through kind of this phase of recovery. for me. And it took just I would say, just fill my cup with positivity. Let me overflow with joy, because if I'm filled, then I can, share and just, and actually encourage others. Even, you don't have to be well, to be an encouragement to others, and you don't have to be well to be compassionate. You don't have to be well to love. Like you can do these things by not being well. And I think in this journey, my mom passed, and talking about perspective, it gave me the deepest perspective ever, because first I was telling myself, it was just under a year. I'd had long COVID. I'm like, oh, surely, like, going through grief during long COVID, this is going to be, probably set me back. I'd been making such progress. I'm like, no, will it? Like, why? Why am I telling myself that? Really, will it? And it's, I started, you kind of
Does
think
it
about
have
what
to?
you have. Does it really? So I really reset myself at that place and said, you know what? I'm going to give myself grace and space. Like,
Yeah.
having grace and space in that healing journey, it can coexist. Grief and the deepest sense of love, the deepest sense of connections I've ever had are in that place when I was dealing with, deep loss. So I think that perspective for me, knowing that you can heal, and also perspective, like my mom had also had Parkinson's disease for over 45 years of her life.
Wow.
So majority of her life, right? And here, like, how am I complaining? My mom didn't complain. I'm like, I'm complaining I've had COVID for, long COVID and not feeling that well. But you know what? I can walk, I can shower, like I can do things. And I needed to just give thanks, right? Like my mom gave thanks. She cared for others. She made others feel special. You do not need to feel well. I mean, a little, like, you want to be in bed, but you can make others feel special, right? You can give a hug. So there's a piece of compassion, I think, um, that even if you're not well, like, what are those things? Who are those people in your life that you can actually just love, and, and have them support you as well. But,
Wow.
that for me was just grounding for me in perspective.
Amazing. I mean, whenever I talk to people about the work that I do, or the work that I really believe that is the kind of core essence of how I want to help people heal, it is about engaging with love. And it sounds so kind of woo woo.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, do you
No,
think I'm crazy here? But yeah,
but it's
I know
about
we're in.
tuning in to one of the most fundamentally important emotions that we can create in our bodies. If we can create a state of loving kindness and loving self-compassion and loving compassion for others and loving gratitude for others, and how people are helping, etc., etc., my goodness, the magic that happens inside us, it's
Yeah.
proper magic stuff that goes on. And obviously I would never, the only doctors that, the doctors that I talk to that about are Boone Lim and Melanie Downey, and they totally get it, which is why I love working with them. But I would never talk to my own GP about it. Like, you know what? I think it's all about love. They're like, really?
It is. I
But
mean,
actually,
what's cured,
you
right? Your upward spiral, right?
yeah,
It's
it's
so
the upward
true.
spiral.
Yep.
And if you read the book, and I call it my set text for the phone program, because I quite like to feel like an English teacher.
Mhm.
Not that we do anything, but the set text is the book Cured by Dr. Jeffrey Rediger. And it's just a brilliant book, because he's a doctor that went on to study people's spontaneous recoveries
Yeah.
from terminal diagnoses, and who were these people that just suddenly were getting better from stage 4 cancer diagnoses and various other things. And what was it that was going on? And my goodness, the journey to recovery for those people is very similar to the things that we're talking about here. It's about looking at identity. It's about connecting with love and self, changing beliefs. And, in one of the pieces that I dig around with is, what do you believe about your health? What do you believe about your health and future? Do you believe that you're going to take on the diseases that your parents have? Do you believe that because other people in your family had cancer, that you'll have cancer? Like, what are those beliefs? And I get
Absolutely.
kind of shake it up a bit and go, do you know what? What else could you believe that would be more helpful? And let's just look at it, because it's just a belief. We don't know it. So is it helping you to believe that? No, of course it's not. So what else could work? And it's about just gently chipping away at all of the stuff that goes on inside and going, let's create the perfectly aligned set of beliefs and behaviors that are going to help you recover. And love is at the core of that. And it's love for oneself, love for looking after yourself. And it's loving the interactions that you have in your life and essentially just loving being alive a bit more. We take it for granted so much. We don't pay it much attention until
Yeah.
it's kind of, it's kind of withdrawn from you to some extent. And then you go, oh my goodness, I haven't been outside in the sunshine for ages. I love this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Begin to appreciate all of that. And, that feeling is really healing.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Gina, you've just put it so beautifully. I couldn't have chosen someone so beautifully aligned with the ethos of what we do in Fern to talk about it. Just tell us a little tiny bit about how you are now. Like what's life like for you now?
Yeah, it's, I'd say, and I'm, again, the mind body connection. So I'm like, no, I'm using in the past. I'm still building stamina. So I would say, sometimes 100%, sometimes I might dip into 80s, but don't we all, right? Have periods, right? Or we're not feeling 100%. But I'm back to work, started that journey in part-time, getting back to work full-time. So life for me, I'm just able to engage doing the things that I love to do. I've been able to ski this year, which is just a deep passion of mine,
Right.
and doing the things that, that I'm with my family again, I'm with friends again. It looks different right now, but I'm okay with that. It's okay. And I know I'm going to continue to build, my strength up as I go here.
It's so inspiring to hear. Let me just ask you, do you say to people that you have long COVID?
No, I stopped saying that. I actually said, I have, and I don't even say I'm recovering, or I just say, you know what, I'm just building my stamina.
Great.
Because I am quite, compared to my son's in weight training. He's 17. He's like, "You're so weak, mom." I'm like, "Okay, thanks. Maybe we can say it a different way." But I do need, my stamina is not like it was, and I know it'll just continue to build. But I do think writing your recovery story, which, I'm like, does this mean like I'm doing a recovery interview? Like, oh my gosh, yay! Because I had written that recovery story months ago, even when I did not feel that well. I wrote that because I really think the mind will tell the body, right? My body's catching up, but my mind, I needed to say, yes, you've recovered. And I'm
Set the
using,
direction. Yeah.
and I think that change in language, even past tense, like I've recovered, and not to say, especially in folks, kind of your rings of circle, like, if there's folks that don't know you that well, they don't even need to know. Like why do you need to tell certain people certain things? Like there's just a sense of like, yep, I'm doing great, and not discrediting the progress you've made. I think that's the biggest thing, is not saying, yeah, I'm recovered. Well, and I still have these X symptoms. Like, I don't go there. I just say, yeah, maybe I'm feeling a little off today, or, just keep it very vague, and don't let my mind tell my body that, so
Yeah.
I can continue to
Yeah.
progress.
Like, shh.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to say this, but I'm not having a great,
Yeah.
just feeling a little, for me, just a little lingering on the brain fog here and there, through work. I know I'll progress, but, doesn't quite feel the same, but I trust the senses I have in my body. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, I always knew in my body what that felt like. And I wrote down early on, like, what do I want? I just wanted vibrant energy. I had lost my spark, and I just wanted to feel that energy again. And so as I think through, like, it can even think through, okay, here, what does the symptoms feel like? Right. And just fixate on that, or think about, wow, I just laughed. Okay. Pause a moment. What did that feel like to laugh? Right. Close your eyes a moment. Like, just let you rest in that moment of feeling good again. And I think it just, for me, continue to multiply just over time.
Well, all I'm going to say to you is, my goodness, you've got your spark, my friend. You are,
Thank you.
you are radiant. You are absolutely radiant. And I can really see that this whole journey, from the lowest point to doing the Fern, to getting yourself back to the point now where you're at now, it's given you like an upgrade. You're out like sparkling in life and just going, wow, look at the amount of joy that I can appreciate now. So, you started this interview by saying, I'm sort of grateful for the process. Just tell us a
Yeah.
tiny bit about that, just to finish off. Is that
Yeah.
is that something that you feel in your heart?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the deepest sense, right? Like I've really gone back thinking through like how grateful I am to learn these lessons. I've constantly was in the fast lane and like slowing down to the place where I'm just, appreciating more. I'm slowing down, deeper connections with people, and I am grateful for what I've learned in this journey. And I'm again, I don't know. Maybe would I redo it? I don't know,
No,
but would I?
let's not even offer that as a
But
choice.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm like, let's not even go there. Why tell myself that?
Exactly.
But I am so grateful because I will take these lessons and understand how to rest, how to care for myself, how to prioritize, myself is needed with illness and just have such a compassion for people, right? Like that are going through hard things. I think that's the aspect too of like how can I use this? How can I use my story to help others? What I've learned, especially invisible illnesses that people don't understand and get, like they're really hard. Um, so I am grateful for, my friends and my family and just this journey I've been on, the people I met. Like I met you through this. Like how, like, I think people come and go through your life in different phases for different reasons, right? And I think having see how this story has unfolded for me. I know every single person's different. But I think the common thing we all have is that we can find what we're grateful for and really reflect on that. So I am grateful and for so much right now.
Yeah. Oh, Gina, it's so beautiful to hear. And, if you're watching this interview and you're thinking, I have not found gratitude for this journey, I just want to add the word yet, because I think
Mhm.
most people that I talk to do come out the other end. And, I think it is important to remember this isn't forever. This will change. If you can do some of the kinds of work that we're just talking about here, as well as taking care of the symptoms and seeing the doctor and getting your scans and all of the bits that are very technical and quite scary. And if you can get that bit handled and then do some of this other stuff as well, you will notice a shift. And it's so powerful when you connect with those positive emotions. And we're really not talking in a kind of toxic positivity way. We are talking about deliberately making yourself exposed to joy, expose yourself to joy, expose yourself to love and connection. And the power of that internally is profound if you allow yourself to kind of tap into it. So don't give up hope. Gina is not unique. Pretty much everyone that comes through the program gets something quite magical out of it. And a sense of trusting themselves. It's like, I trust myself to know how to look after myself now. And I think
Mhm.
that was the piece that I got from my own journey. I knew that I had the skill to look after myself, and I'd pushed myself really hard prior to the
Mhm.
exposure to the COVID virus, et cetera, et cetera. But I knew in my heart of hearts, oh, I know what I need to help me get through this. Once I've had all the checks and all the CT scans and bits and pieces, I needed to connect with others. I needed to find joy. I needed to laugh daily, and I needed to not focus on my symptoms.
Mhm.
That is basically the premise for everything that I teach everyone else. And because
Absolutely.
I knew I couldn't do it by myself. I'm not very good at doing hard things on my own, and none of us are.
I don't know who is equipped. Like who doesn't want to feel right,
Right.
love and value. Like everyone wants to feel
Exactly.
heard, be heard and seen. So I think that's the beautiful community that you've built, Susie, is just a really inclusive and just compassionate. People feel safe. I
Mm.
think come to your courses and classes and just feel like there's not a question that people will frown upon. Like it just feels like a really great place and very inclusive community to have support um, during this illness.
And that in itself is quite possibly the best medicine that we could take.
Mhm.
No side effects
No.
and very inexpensive or even free.
Mhm.
You can create it for yourself. You don't even need to sign up to anything that I do. It's all there. It's within us. But, at our toughest times, it's often hard to create by yourself. But, even if you just jump into the big Facebook group and you say, hey, who'd like to go on a recovery journey with me? I'm looking for a bunch of people to come with me on a journey of joy. That's doable. That's easy. That's just a bunch of WhatsApps. And you might make a whole bunch of friends out of it. I know quite a lot of the fern groups now have got kind of reunions planned and, events where they're all going to try and meet up. And it's really beautiful to see these connections coming together. So, on that note, there's a really beautiful book called Connection by Vivek Murthy, who's your chief surgeon general in the US right now. I think he's still in post. And he was kind of tasked with going out there and finding what was, the health crisis in the US that needed to be dealt with on his watch while he was in post. And he's written a beautiful book called Connection, because he said the thing that I found was people are disconnected. They're disconnected from themselves, from joy, from love, from each other, from community. They're isolated, they're lonely. And when they're sick, they lose identity. And the power of connection is so profound. And I think, it's really beautiful that we have a program that allows people to do that very, very important piece, which is to connect with others and to share the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gina, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm utterly delighted to see you smiling and to have
on a video call. Yeah, no, it's
amazing.
I didn't think anything of joining the video call, and a year ago I was off screen, so it's possible. I think just keep believing.
Right. And to be honest, when you first logged in for this interview, I was like, oh my God, this is what Gina looks like. Because it was always dark, right? It's
like dark. I'm like, oh.
Always dark. She often had her screen off. And, there would just be some kind of dim, low light somewhere in the room. And little Gina kind of over there going, oh, it's really early.
Yeah.
Would wake up and make herself do it, and I think there's determination. Here is a woman who is determined to get better. She's not going to be fazed by the time.
No, I would say
wasn't a gift to you at the time, but
no, it wasn't a gift, but fine.
You did it.
Keep seeking what works right for you. And I think everything you've built, and you were my filter. So I don't go into really any other social media, but anything that Susie posts, I'll read and I'll watch. So listen to Susie, because for somebody like me who had just always pushed through, I didn't know how to retrain my autonomic nervous system. Sleeping isn't the answer, but doing other things that provided deep rest were.
Right.
And I'd say you've provided so many resources, for this community. So it's working. And I would say, follow Susie, listen to Susie. That is my nutshell of, being on the right path. Wonderful.
Gina, I'm privileged. For me, whenever I see someone who's just made such a transformation and I've been, honored to be on that journey with you, it's such a privilege, and I'm just, I'm sort of overwhelmed always when I hear this kind of thing. So it's an absolute pleasure. I'm going to press stop on our interview now so that I can have a little chat with Gina off screen, which will be very nice. But thanks so much for watching. And hopefully Gina's story will inspire you to connect with others on your way so that your isolation and your fear become things of the past, because that will make a difference. Okay. Lots of love, guys. And I'm sure we'll bring another story to you very soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rest, Repair, Recover podcast. If today's episode gave you hope, made you smile, or even just helped you feel a bit less alone, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and maybe share it with someone who might need it too. So until next time, take care of yourselves and know that you're not on your own.